any moment, a flood of new video games gets announced, and honestly, a lot of them aren't all that interesting, but a few really stand out. And those are the ones we actually care about, right? So let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Cathan, and today on our channel, we're looking at 10 newly revealed games that genuinely excite us. Starting with number 10, we've got Project Tal. At least that's how I think you pronounce it. Maybe it's Project Tal, who knows? What matters is, the trailer looks incredibly impressive. It comes across like a mix that blends elements of something between a traditional open-world adventure, a bit of Dragon's Dogma, and touches of Korean mythology. And honestly, it feels like it might end up being something genuinely different. It could turn into something special. Anyway, we're bending the rules a little because this was technically revealed before. It originally showed up under the name Tal or Tal, the Arcane Lands, which makes me assume TL meant the Arcane Lands, but now it's just Project Tal. Tal? Whatever. Who knows? Honestly, they should have stuck with the Arcane Lands. That name actually sounds pretty solid. So like, hopefully they rethink the title. I mean, barely any games actually launch with Project as the final name. The Arcane Lands just fits better. Forget the reveal mix-ups. Forget the naming mess. Sooner or later, someone on the dev team is going to say the real name out loud anyway. Whatever. What matters is that it's a seriously impressive-looking action RPG that appears to focus more on your party members than most games in this style usually do. Typically, your companions are just kind of there, maybe tossing out a hit or two, but not really matching your level of involvement in combat. This game clearly wants nothing to do with that approach. It's breaking the usual pattern with companions who feel like real fighters on their own and genuinely shift how each encounter plays out. The NPC support and the whole climbing on creatures mechanic instantly reminds me of Dragon's Dogma, but there's a lot more shown in the trailer that hints it's probably a lot more beneath the surface. It looks huge, completely fantasy-driven, and visually distinct from the usual open-world RPG formula. It's not expected until sometime in 2027, so it's still far away, but that first trailer makes it feel like a title worth keeping an eye on. And speaking of keeping an eye on things, we'd appreciate it if you noticed the subscribe button too. If you spot it, maybe give it a click. A surprising number of viewers aren't subscribed, and it genuinely helps us a lot when you are. So if you can, please do us a huge favor and tap that button. We seriously appreciate it. Hopefully it helps you catch the kind of content you actually want to watch. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who hits it. Now, moving forward, at number 9, we've got Valor Mortis. The team behind the Ghost Runner series has taken a heavy, monster-sized swing with this one, and it looks way more ambitious than anything they've done before. This is a full-on Soulslike, but with a standout twist. The entire game is played in first person, which is definitely not the usual approach. I mean, we've been a handful of titles that tried blending Souls-like mechanics into a first-person view. King's Field is basically the ancestor of the Souls formula, and that was first-person too. But let's be honest, it's still not the standard approach, even if the perspective shift makes sense. What really makes this one stand out is how it breaks the traditional genre rules by mixing in actual firearms and proper aiming mechanics. You still get the usual melee options and the expected close-range combat, but you're also able to pull out a pistol, a rifle, and even use magical abilities to strike enemies from range. You can shoot incoming projectiles out of the air or chain a deflection into a quick pistol counter. On paper, it doesn't sound wildly innovative, but watching the trailer really sells how fresh and different it feels in motion. The Napoleonic era theme is also surprisingly appealing. And to be fair, we've seen more of that aesthetic lately with games like Steel Rising and Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn. But even with other titles exploring that kind of setting, this one stands out mainly because of how strong the trailer looks. At number 8, we've got Darkwood 2. Definitely not something I expected. The first Darkwood was one of the earliest and most unsettling survival horror experiences we ever played, but I honestly never thought a sequel would happen, especially not one being handled by Ice Pick Lodge, the team behind the Pathologic games. The shift from Acid Wizard Studio, who created the first Darkwood, over to Ice Pick Lodge, I mean, it's a bit worrying, but realistically, there's no way to bring the original team back since they shut down in 2023. So this is basically the only path to getting a sequel at all. And honestly, if anyone's going to take over, the Pathologic developers are one of the strongest choices you could ask for. Darkwood 2 looks like a direct continuation of the first. Same bleak, monochrome style, same top-down perspective. The world itself feels more developed this time though, where the original kept things was pretty vague about pretty much everything. The description for Darkwood 2 actually gives some clearer information this time. The story takes place in the RLC, where all the water has vanished and been replaced by a twisted, expanding forest. Basically, the new Darkwood. It's a standalone entry, not directly tied to the first game, but it looks like it keeps that same mix of survival, exploration, and strange encounters that made the original so distinctive. Hopefully, it can live up to what the first game built when it eventually launches. It's basically a fresh start. New studio means they were basically creating a new game that OS intended to serve as the next step in that series. So yeah, there's no guarantee it'll match the quality of the first. Hopefully it does. Pathologic is a fascinating project, but the reveal for this one didn't include a release window, so we have no clue when it's actually coming out. At number 7, we've got the Expanse, Osiris Reborn. With Mass Effect 4 either incredibly far away or possibly never arriving at all, depending on how bleak you feel about BioWare's future, someone has to fill that massive space opera gap left in modern gaming. It took a while, but it finally looks like the first serious contender aiming to fill that role. And surprisingly, it's coming from the studio behind the Pathfinder games. It's an extremely bold leap for those developers. Their previous titles looked great for their scale, but they've never operated anywhere near AOLO RPG territory. Yet everything you'd expect from a modern Mass Effect style experience is here. It's a third-person, cover-based shooter, where you travel with 2 squad mates who each have unique skills and help you out during fights. There are decisions to make, bonds to build, and entire worlds to visit, all inside a sci-fi setting known as the Expanse. So yeah, expect at least a few nods or cameos from the TV series. Even if you're not into the original show, which honestly I'm really not, this is still a project worth paying attention to. Owlcat has a reputation for deep, mechanically rich RPGs with real choices and consequences that can completely shift the direction of your adventure. Hopefully a lot of that depth carries over into Osiris Reborn, while also making the game a bit smoother and easier to jump into. The idea of getting a new Mass Effect style experience, Andromeda 2, is honestly refreshing. It's a clean slate for a genre I really wish we saw more often. At number 6, we've got Black Myth, Zhong. There's a pretty good chance I'm saying that wrong, but whatever. This was first shown back in August, and it's the next major project from Game Science, was title, and it's definitely a different direction compared to Black Myth, Wukong. Yeah, Wukong went big and bold, but underneath it all, it was still a fairly classic action game with some Souls-like flavor mixed in. Zhong looks nothing like that. You're literally a towering giant this time. According to the reveal, it's meant to be an action RPG similar in spirit to the first Black Myth, but even the developers admit they're not totally sure how this new protagonist is supposed to play yet. The trailer gives almost no real indication of what we can expect, other than the fact that the protagonist is massive and there seems to be some kind of monster control involved. If that's the case, it's easy to picture a game that plays very differently from the first, while still keeping that action RPG core. But at this point, it's tough to say exactly what Black Myth is shaping up to be. Still, it's exciting to watch its development unfold. And personally, I'm glad to see the devs pushing to try something new, rather than just relying on the success of what came before, with their first game, which by the way, is pretty impressive for a developer who seemingly came out of nowhere and hit it big. That's pretty badass. At number 5, we've got 007 First Light. This one I found a bit of a cheat, since we've been known about it for a while, but it wasn't officially revealed until recently. Based on what we've seen so far, it looks like it's going to follow the classic EA James Bond formula: driving, stealth, shooting, and all the action-packed stuff you'd expect. It's giving off serious vibes from the 2003 game Everything or Nothing, but it looks super promising. It's got everything you'd expect from a James Bond game, a thrilling, roller coaster-like story. It's not exactly a Hitman-style game, but at the same time, it kind of is. From what we've seen, depending on the level, there looks like there'll be some elements of social stealth involved. I'm guessing they're holding some details back for now, because honestly, how could you not blend in some Hitman mechanics into a James Bond game? Even though James Bond is usually known for the action, Hitman games are probably the closest thing you'd get to a true spy simulator. But anyway, it's a breath of fresh air to see a polished, classic, single-player story mode game like this. It almost has that retro vibe, doesn't it? We definitely need more games packed with set pieces and intense action. At number 4, we've got Forza Horizon 6. 2025 has been all about Japan, and it looks like that trend S sticking around with the newest entry in the Forza Horizon series. It's set in a prize for guessing. Yep, the land of the rising sun. Announced in late September. Not much has been shown about the game yet, aside from its setting and some impressive visuals. We do know that it'll be available on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and PC, though there will be some timed exclusivity, so there's that to keep in mind. From what we've seen so far, the environment will offer a lot of variety. Everything from quiet rural villages to winding country roads to the dense urban landscape of Tokyo, which means we're probably in for Nuik, the most expansive and daring open world in the series' history. While past Forza Horizon games have featured some pretty big urban areas, none have tackled something like Tokyo. Of course, it'll likely just be a small section of the city, but the fact that they're including it is exciting enough. Seasons will also make a return, and this time, they'll likely have an even bigger impact on the core experience. They're not completely overhauling things with Forza Horizon 6, but from what we've seen, doesn't seem to change much, but honestly, they don't really need to. At number 3, we've got Blood Message. First revealed on June 19th, this one's a highly polished single-player adventure. It's another epic inspired by ancient China, but what sets it apart is how it sticks much closer to reality, rather than diving into fantasy. There are no giant beasts here, just a messenger, and his son journeying through a war-torn world during the fall of the Tang dynasty. That kind of reminds me of The Last of Us, but set in ancient China. Not exactly with zombies, of course. Zombies aren't exactly the deadliest part of The Last of Us, so I think you get why I'm making that comparison. It's not out of left field. The game is a cinematic action-adventure with what seems to be a more linear storyline, and honestly, I'm excited about that because we're just not seeing enough of these high-quality story-driven games anymore. It's refreshing too. Seems to be getting a bit of a comeback with all these recent announcements. At number 2, we have Hell Let Loose, Vietnam. Any follow-up to the underrated World War II multiplayer shooter Hell Let Loose is exciting, but I honestly didn't expect them to go full Battlefield and make a Vietnam game as the next step. This game looks like it's keeping everything that made the original stand out, while upgrading the tech significantly. Expect the same 50v50 battles, still highly tactical, brutal gameplay, and a truly unique, both fascinating and frustrating in the best way. The original game was practically a horror experience with how tense it could get, but the Vietnam setting is likely to turn that intensity up even more. The dense jungles and the hit-and-run tactics of the Viet Cong are going to make things insanely chaotic. There's a real opportunity here to make the gameplay between the factions feel even more distinct and asymmetric, which could bring in some fresh mechanics to the game's RTS layer. There's a ton of potential for could do with this idea, but I'm happy just to see how Let Loose get a sequel. It's not just something I expected to see, you know, let alone going the extra mile and switching up the setting and adding what is potentially a lot of new stuff. There's no release date specifically, but I'd guess you're going to see it on all major consoles and PC platforms, excluding the Switch 2. And finally, at number 1, it's Entropy. The makers of the aggressively idiosyncratic Dread, the creators of Dread Delusion, are back with an even stranger journey into their twisted imagination. The first game was a Morrowind-inspired first-person RPG, but this one, I kid you not, is a classic turn-based RPG. Not Baldur's Gate, but more like the old Final Fantasy games. Think world maps, towns to explore, and 6 party members to switch between. As old-school RPG as it gets, but with a strange retro 3D look that feels more inspired by Morrowind than Final Fantasy. They did some pretty impressive work with Dread Delusion, and I'm genuinely excited to see what they've got in store with Entropy. I've got a few bonuses for you too. First up, Warhammer 40k, Dawn of War 4. This long-dormant RTS franchise is finally getting a fresh start with King Games, the developers behind Iron Harvest. That game was a bit flawed, but I'm honestly not too worried about this one. From what they've shown, and everything the devs have said, it seems like they're really hitting the mark. They've mentioned their guiding light is the original Dawn of War, complete with 4 playable factions, each with their own campaign, plus a ton of single-player modes to mess around in. The devs clearly understand what RTS fans want from the series, and they're really leaning into it. Sure, it could end up being a mess, not saying it's impossible, but I am cautiously optimistic about it. Warhammer 40k fans, this might be the one to watch in 2026. Next up, we've got Batman, Legacy of the Dark Knight. It's easy to write off yet another LEGO Batman game, especially after, and we've seen plenty of the same thing by now, but this one feels like a real step forward, and and is definitely worth getting excited about because it actually looks like the true successor to the Arkham series. Watch the trailer. It's got that Arkham vibe, gliding through the world, Predator stealth sections, and the iconic combat style. It doesn't feel like just another Lego game. I'm not expecting the same depth as the Arkham games, of course. It'll likely be more kid-friendly, easier to pick up and play, but it's still wild to see all this action in a Lego game. They even show Batman using explosive gel to blow open a cracked wall, which is basically saying, yeah, this is Arkham. They're clearly tapping into that Arkham nostalgia, and honestly, it's working. Next up is Parasite Mutant, a retro revival I never thought I'd see. It's very much in the vein of Parasite Eve, borrowing heavily from the unique combat system of that classic PS1 Square RPG. It blends survival horror with traditional RPG elements, giving us it's everything you'd hope for, and it just looks great. I respect the decision to not just stick to the PS1 style guide, instead opting for more modern fidelity. It gives the game its own distinct identity, separate from the inspiration. I'm not sure what the final product will turn out to be, but the trailer certainly has me hopeful. And finally, we have Hyperfunk. Team Reptile's follow-up to Bomb Rush Cyberfunk seems like an exciting evolution for the series. The multiplayer-focused announcement does have me a bit concerned about what the final game is going to look like, but honestly, the visuals and music alone have me hyped for whatever Hyperfunk ends up being. It definitely seems like a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio, but this time with a lot more depth in the trick mechanics. Plus, there are random online players showing up in what looks like much bigger city areas than what we saw in Cyberfunk. Dynamic street battles are in, multiplayer matches are in, and free roaming collectible hunts are there too. But what else is coming? Do we still have a story? Or is it more of a free-form multiplayer experience? Not sure yet, but it does look amazing. They really captured that Dreamcast aesthetic in the first game, and here, they're taking it even further. The city looks incredible, and I can't wait to see what else they have in store. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's all for today though. Drop a comment and let us know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a great time to do it. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to catch them as soon as they drop is of course by subscribing. So hit that subscribe button and don't forget to turn on notifications. And as always, we truly appreciate you watching. I'm Raven and we'll catch you next time right here on Game Ranks.